Hello, everyone. Welcome to the. Hey, I'm here with 6 lovely faces. Welcome to the first edition of Contentful's monthly community hangout. My name is Stefan, and I have already a bunch of guests with me. Should we do the introduction now, or should we do it later a little bit? What do you think? I think we can do it later.
Do it all right.
All right, then let's do it later. So before we get started, let me just do some housekeeping. But I'm so excited that a few people are here with us today. And we want to make this a monthly thing. We want to share what's up in the Contentful community. We want to share a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of programming expertise. And we're super excited. So if you have any feedback, please let us know. And before now we really kick off, let's do some housekeeping here. So first of all, this event underlies the Contentful Community Code of Conduct. So in case you feel you have any instance of where you don't feel safe or uncertain about anything, please feel free to reach out to myself or Angie. You see our contact details below. We want this to be a safe space for everybody. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if there's anything coming up. As usual, if you're using Contentful and you want to find out more about what's going up in the community, what is the DevRel team up to, what are the resources that we're publishing, you can go to contentful.com/developers. Usually this is the hub for all things Contentful developers. And if you want to engage with the community, you can go to contentful.com/Slack. You can sign up for our free Slack community. And if you have questions, you can ask them there. And I have Slack still open. Let's see how annoyed.
Sorry, did you get my notification?
Yeah, let's see how this one goes. So we are happy to have you there. I myself personally and Shai are hanging out there quite a little bit. If you are new to the world of GraphQL, we just recently released our GraphQL API to the free tier, to the community edition. So if you want to learn about how to use GraphQL in general with the Contentful context, you can go to CTFL, which is short for contentful.io, learn GraphQL. And then if you build something with GraphQL, we always want to learn about what you're doing with the platform. You can go to CTFL.io/GraphQL swag, and we can send you some socks and maybe t-shirts, some stickers. But we would love to hear from you what you're building with the API. Then we are currently here live on YouTube and Twitch. We do this once a week on Tuesdays. So you see there that we have a nice lineup coming up. So we have Brian Douglas from GitHub joining us. I think it's next week. Shai is going to talk about GitHub Actions and Contentful. And then I think Younes, who is also on the call, we have a session set up too, going on the app framework. So we would love, we do things live. So if you have questions or want to join the live coding sessions, you can do that too. And here is the agenda for today. So first of all, yours truly will share a little bit about the features and the things that were released in the Contentful ecosystem just recently. Then we have Martin already sitting around. He is just waving there below. Martin is a good friend of mine. He will talk about SEO for web developers, make your website findable. And then we have I built this session. So there we have Younes and Max, who will share their experience with Contentful and show a little bit what they're doing. If you have any general questions, we have a little bit of time. I will answer these questions. If you have anything related to Contentful, we can do that too. And then we have a social activity. If someone wants to hang around and stick around to find out about this game that is all over the internet, which is called Among Us. So we will spin up in public a private room there. And then if you want to play with us just for an hour or something, you can join our community Slack. And there is a channel that is called Monthly Hangout, because we don't want to make a call available to everybody listening on the call. So you can join there, and then we could play a little bit right afterwards. So for the future, if you want to participate in anything of this community hangout, we're going to do this once a month. Go to contentful.com/Slack and join monthly hangout. We're always keen to learn about what people do with the platform. If you have feedback, questions, this is the place to go. So first things done, housekeeping done. So what's new in Contentful? For the people that are new to Contentful, if you're a Contentful user, the best place to really keep track of the things that are happening in the platform is going to contentful.com/developers/changelog. And for the old school people like myself, it does have an RSS feed. So you can subscribe to this and then you can get the information that you're interested in right in your inbox. So that's cool. So what happened in there, or what is included in the changelog right now? First of all, we released instant parameters for applications. So you might know that we at Contentful, we have the Contentful app framework, which allows you to extend the Contentful editing experience right in the web app. And let me just show you an example. So here you see an app that I use quite daily. So I use Contentful to blog on my site, stefanjudice.com, and you see there that I have a little tab right in the interface that is called Publishing Notes and Tips. So I have this little checklist that I follow along whenever I want to publish an article. And this is an app that is installed in Contentful. So what you see here is the so-called app config. So this is how the whole thing works. And you see there that I have some parameters and the markdown basically right in the interface. These are installation parameters that you can use when you install a Contentful application. What was now released just yesterday is that we now have in the app configuration or definition screen, we have a new part there which is called instance parameters. And these parameters allow you to add additional fields of configuration. And you can then add these when you're placing your application in a certain location of the Contentful interface. This is a little bit tricky to explain. We will have a detailed explanation with our colleague David in the US East session just in a few hours. You can expect a few more tutorials around this to come. So the thing that you can take away from that is, first of all, that we now have two different kinds of parameters. So we have installation parameters that you can set and control per app installation on a space environment. They are app specific. And then we have instance parameter, which you can use to set configurations for your app running in a specific location. If you want to learn more about Contentful's app frameworks, contentful.com/developers/docs/extensibility is the place to go here. Then I'm a big fan of the GraphQL API, and I'm playing around with it very, very often. We released 3 new things. First of all, one thing that I want to plug here is that I was a little bit I was not very happy that I had to go to graphql.com, graphql.contentful.com/explore to have an interface to figure out the GraphQL queries that I want to use in my application. So I built a little app for that, which is called Contentful GraphQL Playground. You can go to the marketplace in Contentful and can install it right away, which then gives you this. You will now have, if you install this app and you're using GraphQL, you can install this app and you have GraphQL Playground right in your Contentful UI. I think this is very handy. And here you see already a query with the new features that we released. So first of all, when you're dealing with localized content, you can now query several fields in the same entity in different locales. So this can be very useful when you're dealing with localized content. And also when you're dealing with the linked from field, you can also now specify an allowed locales field there. So these are the 2 things on the localization front. And also last week in our Slack, what happened is that we received feedback that we might need some more filters when people are dealing with GraphQL and referenced items. So what also made it into production just a few days ago, I think it was last week, is that we now have a filter available that is _exists. If case you want to query collections and want to see if something in the child entries is actually referenced and available. Then we have some smaller tweaks in the Contentful interface. So you can now schedule asset publishing. So when you're dealing with a lot of content, that can be very handy to kind of control and plan your content releases. And also there are some tiny tweaks on how you can now reorder things when you're referencing contents on all ends. And I think that is the last part. When you're running Contentful in an enterprise scale with a lot of content, you most likely have a CI or a CD pipeline in place, which means that you have a certain application code running, you branch out and you test that in a certain environment. And what you usually want to do is you want to do the same things with your content. So what we now have available is a custom aliases. And I don't want to go too deep into the nitty-gritty details of that, but we have a webinar tomorrow about that. So if you want to learn more about how to make your content delivery a little bit more secure and safer, you can go to CTFLIO CCMH, which stands for Contentful Community Monthly Hangout. aliases-webinar. And with this, I made it through the first 10 minutes with the housekeeping and what happened in the Contentful ecosystem. And with this, I think it's time for Martin. And Martin will give us a little bit of wisdom about search engine optimization and Google. Google works for Google, and Martin actually works for the Google Search Relations team. And I'm keen to learn more about what Martin has to say. Take it away, Martin.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Stefan, and also thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about a technical topic that is probably less hot or hyped than other things in the technical sphere right now. As Stefan said, I work for the Google Search Relations team. I am a web developer nonetheless, and now I'm a developer advocate for search specifically. And as a web developer, I noticed that I don't know that much about SEO. I know that a lot of it looks like black magic, and you get experts with a different level of trustworthiness, I would say. But the same is true for developers. If you've ever really looked around the market in terms of web developers, there are some developers that are fantastic, and some of them are shady at best. What I want to get away from this, or what I want you to take away from this presentation, is I want to give you some tools to identify what good SEO is and what it isn't, and also motivate you to think about how you can actually help your business or your website to gain traction in organic search. So let's dive into it. First things first, what is SEO? SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, which is a little arcane maybe, and depending on who you're asking, it might feel like it's magic, and lots of people are having a really hard time explaining what SEO really is. So I would say think of a search engine as a computer system or a robot trying to understand what your page is about and using your page. If you have ever written a piece of crawling code or any code that scrapes information from websites, you know that this is surprisingly hard, and sometimes it's surprisingly hard because websites are making it hard. Sometimes it's just hard because everything in the web stack is not super easy to automate away for a robot. But fundamentally, search engines aren't black magic. They are not magical beasts of wonder. They are a set of smaller systems that are basically doing different parts of the work. And in the end, what we get is the search form where we have a query input where we can say like, cafe in Zurich or cafe nearby or open cafe right now, and then get a bunch of results that we can click on and hopefully find what we have been looking for. It really is basically just like a bunch of computer programs talking to each other, and it starts on the left-hand side here with a crawler. So the very first thing is that somehow a search engine caught wind of our website existing, and in that case, would make an HTTP request, download the content that we respond with, and then passes it on. So now we have fetched the website, and we now have the data that is on the website available in our search engine system. The next step would be to understand what the website is about. Is this a website about cats? Is this a website about dogs? Is this a website about Contentful? What is this? And if it's a website about cats, is it a website with cute cat pictures? Is it a website where you can buy cat food and cat toys? What are we looking at? What kind of purpose does the website serve? And then we put that into a database fundamentally, which is called the index. So we are like, this website is about cat and cat food and cat toys and buying cat stuff, and has a blog about cats. All that kind of stuff is put into the database. And then when a user comes and starts typing into the search field saying like best or cheap cat toys under 50 euros, then what we do is we take that query and we look into our index. What kind of pages do we have that might be relevant to this? And then we look at lots of different bits and pieces, and we try to figure out which website that we have in the index is the best for this, which is the second best, the third best, and so on and so forth. This is called ranking, and we look at lots of things to decide which one should be the highest ranked, and then all the rest of the pages as well. And last but not least, we have this list of potential websites that we want to show to the user, and then we serve that as the search result page to the user. That's what a search engine does. Now, why should I care as a developer? Well, because there are a few things that I can influence. And not just as a developer, also as an SEO and also as a business owner, we have influence over certain things. We do have a lot of influence on how our server setup looks like, how fast our server responds, how fast our website loads, how well it works. So is it sometimes failing? Do we sometimes get a 500 server error? Or is it always responding quickly with the result, with the content? Does everything have a URL? Do these URLs stay available for the crawler over time? These kind of things are things that we can influence. And also, if we build everything with JavaScript, do we make sure that our JavaScript works reliably and that the content always shows up and that the content can always be processed? As a business owner or an SEO, do we write content that actually makes sense and you can understand as a robot what this page is about or not? So these are things that we have under control. We can also specifically say like, oh, this page should not really be in the search index. We don't want people searching for something to find this. You can also take steps for that as well. So you get to control what gets in the index and what can potentially be crawled or not. A lot of people, however, especially SEOs, happen to focus on ranking. And that's a bad idea because there be dragons. It's lots of factors. It's hundreds of ranking factors. The weights keep changing. We are basically trying to model. We try to teach a computer to understand what is a good result for a given query. And when people say like, my website doesn't rank, then my first question is for what? What is the thing that people are searching for that you want to show up for? And then that's immediately where people are like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, but if you don't know what your website should show up for in terms of people searching for something on the internet, then that's a bad thing. Then that's what you want to work on. Serving is out of the question as well, just because serving is purely our problem, not yours. Just showing a search result page to users is not something that you need to work with or deal with. Righty dokie. So what do we want? Well, we as web developers hopefully want users to find our content, because I at least build things for people to use them. If you're just excited about building a web page and then no one ever sees that web page, then that's a nice hobby, but that's not really something that you as a professional web developer should be interested in. And assuming that you are building websites for people to use them, you want them to find your content, your website, right? So that's your goal. You build something cool and then you want people to use it, for which people need to find it. What we want as Google Search is if you build a cool thing with useful information on it, like a really cool website with cat pictures, for instance, then we want to show that to users looking for cute cat pictures. If that's what you offer and that's what people want, then this should actually match on both sides, right? But so you only need users, search engines, and you. What do SEOs do then? Well, SEOs, or at least good SEOs, are there to help you make sure that you are meeting users searching for your stuff where they actually search for. So making sure that you have a content strategy, making sure that your content is reasonable, making sure that there are no technical issues that prevent the crawler or the indexer from actually understanding what's on the page and putting it in the index. So good SEOs are basically a guide that helps you, or are guides that help you making sure that there's nothing preventing the search engines from surfacing your content to users who might want to use your content. And when I say use your content, I basically mean it depends a little bit on what you're doing. If you are a company that sells products, you want people buying these products from you. If you're a company that sells training, you want people to buy the training from you. If you're a company that basically has a website that informs about products, then people can actually get the information about products and then act upon this information, be it going to your restaurant or ordering food or like considering different product options that you are recommending and selling elsewhere. So basically, we all are on the same page in terms of what we want. Sometimes there are SEOs that are basically just trying to game the search engine by tricking it into believing that this is good content. In the long term, this is never successful because our job as a search engine is to exactly find these bits and pieces and throw them out of the search results, because that's not what our users actually want. So a good SEO actually is a really nice guide. If someone basically tells you pay me and you'll get great ranking results, that's usually tricky if they're not asking questions about your content, your goals, and your users. Let me give you an example of what I see far too often. I was born and raised in Germany, and breakfast is a really important part of my day. I do enjoy my breakfast, and my breakfast usually contains toasted bread. Lovely. However, my toaster broke, so I need to buy a new toaster. Now let's look at this website. This website is built with the latest, most fantastic JavaScript technology out there. It is giving you 100 on all the scores on Lighthouse. It is beautiful. It loads so fast. It's distributed on a global fantastic CDN. It's using a great content management system. It's lovely. It's amazing. It's the best website ever, right? I would argue it isn't. Someone paid a designer to make a nice design. The developers had a lot of fun, and maybe it's like serverless, and it's really fast, and uses lots of caching layers, and uses the latest and greatest database to store its content and whatnot. Has a GraphQL API. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, because if I come to this website as a human looking for a toaster, what does this website tell me? It has an image that might be a toaster. Good. The second most prominent thing says smart, simple, beautiful, which is garbage. It sounds nice, but it's garbage. Because what does this describe? Smart, simple, beautiful. Is this a computer? Is this a phone? Is this a car? Is this a watch? Smart, simple, beautiful says nothing. Congratulations, you just wasted space and my time of attention. Okay, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, so I continue reading on your website. It will disrupt your breakfast. Thanks, but no thanks. I'd rather have a peaceful, nice breakfast. I don't want my breakfast disrupted. It is already disrupted because my toaster broke. I don't want further disruptions. Not a good thing. Thermochemical food processing. Ooh, we're getting fancy on the terms here. Still means nothing. This could, for all means and purposes, be an oven. This is also thermochemical food processing. Or a pan where I can fry things in. Great. It's not helping. The best inventions in sliced bread. Oh, we are punny. We are making a reference to sliced bread. So probably this is a toaster, but I don't know. So this page doesn't help me. What else does this page offer me? Where can I go from here? I can go home. I'm assuming that I'm on the home page, so that's pointless. Our philosophy. Oh, I had Latin in school. I loved it. All these philosophers, Epicure and all these others. Great, lovely. Plato. Fantastic. Great material for thinking. But I want toast. So I don't want to read your philosophy. I want toast. My toast is broken. How does your philosophy help me with getting a toasted piece of toast? So this is apparently about the hot bread. Then there's the hot bread X10. I don't know what the hot bread is still. So I'm not going to click on that weird link. And then the call to action is join the movement. But I'm pretty happy with my religion. Thanks, but no thanks. I'd rather not join a movement. I just want to learn more about toasters. So the design is fantastic. The technology is fantastic. But what is with this content? This page does not tell me what the hell this is about. And if I, as a human being, have a hard time figuring out what the hell I'm looking at, can you imagine how hard it is for a computer to understand what the hell is happening there? It's impossible. This is not a good, helpful website. What do we need to change to make this a good website? Let's have a look at an alternative version of this. Bam! I come to this page, I look at the image, not sure if it's a toaster. I look at the most prominent piece of text, the fastest toaster. Aha! This website is about the fastest toaster. Great. It offers me a toaster that never burns my toast again. Love it. Gets my toast faster. That sounds good. Try Toasty McToasterface. Okay, so this Toasty McToasterface is the fastest toaster. That's great. But what if I'm not sure which kind of toaster I need? I don't even know how to evaluate a toaster because I'm a nerd and I have spreadsheets and stuff, and I want to evaluate which toaster is the right toaster for me. How do I choose a toaster? Do I need the fastest toaster? Is a slower toaster better or potentially cheaper? Or what's the downside of a fast toaster? There must be downsides. There's always downsides. Everything is a trade-off. So what's the downside of a fast toaster? I don't know. So conveniently, there's a link that says how to choose a toaster. So they even tell me how I could potentially make my buying decision. That's awesome. And if it's not the fastest toaster that I want, I could click on our toasters and I see alternative toasters. Maybe there's a different toaster that helps me have a better breakfast or a more relaxed breakfast. I don't know. So there's options. Fantastic. And if I am just basically looking for a toaster just as quickly as possible, I can just click on buy a toaster and then I'm done. My task is off the list. I just wait for the toaster to arrive and I'll have nice breakfast again. Love it. Note that the design hasn't changed. The technology hasn't changed. But these two pages will perform very, very differently in search engines. And again, search engines are free sources of traffic, of people seeing your website. If I'm searching for a new toaster, this website will show up. This, probably not. So this website will get, this version of the website will get more eyeballs, more users coming to them from search. And search traffic is free traffic. You don't have to buy ads for it. You don't have to produce assets for it. It just happens to come to your website. Which of the two websites is yours? If you look at your company website, if you're a startup or a product company or a service company, which of the two does yours resemble? Very often I see this, and with a little bit of guidance, you can get out with a website like this. That's usually what also good SEOs help you with. If you are here, they tell you like, look, what are you trying to do? And then you're like, well, we're trying to sell toasters. And it's like, okay, why does this website not say toaster anywhere? Which is a legitimate question. This is a ridiculously, extremely clear example, but oftentimes it's less clear. I have been to so many business websites where I needed a certain thing, and then I come to the website and they're like, established in 1957, two brothers from Zurich decided that it's time to revolutionize the way we work. And I'm like, you are a pizza delivery service. Why don't you say pizza delivery? And how can I actually order pizzas here? Oh, it's the phone number on the bottom of the page. I actually have to call you like Savage from 100 years ago. Right? So SEO without good content is kind of like polishing a turd, or for those who are a little more sensitive, is kind of chocolate ice cream. Not saying chocolate ice cream is bad, but like I think chocolate ice cream is a nicer way of saying what this emoji depicts. I promised you technical SEO, so let's go into the technical side of things. As a developer, what are the things that I need to look out for? Well, first things first, surprisingly, you want to make sure that you have useful URLs. When it comes to URLs, they work quite easily. So that you have a host, which is a bunch of computers, or at least a single computer responding to a certain name on the internet. And then you have different paths and folders and files under that machine that you can access. You can also have this hash subsection thing. If you have a really long document and you want to expose a specific part so that you can jump to that part straight away, say like it's a really long Wikipedia article and you want to jump straight to a specific part of that Wikipedia article, it's nice to have like the hash and then an identifier for that part, and you can jump straight there. Great. So these hashes, these fragments, that's what they are called, fragments, are meant to navigate within existing content. So all of this content is there under the URL immediately, and then I can jump within the content. That's what they are for. However, when we came up with single-page applications, we needed to figure out a way to load different content when things change without actually reloading the page. So we came up with using fragments for that. So now these fragments would be handled by JavaScript and would load different content. So you have like the home page, and then you click on a link that's like hash about, for instance, and then it would load the about page. And then you would click on a link that says hash products, and it would load the products. But this content isn't there. If I go to the URL /, none of the content is the homepage content. There's no products, there's no about, there's nothing else. It's only loaded dynamically with JavaScript once the fragment changes. We felt bad about this a little bit, so we might have added things like the little exclamation mark to kind of say, like, this is not really a fragment. We are kind of like doing a hack here. Unfortunately, crawlers operate, and that means search engines, operate on URLs. And the fragment is irrelevant to search engines and crawlers because we look at the whole content of the page rather than individual bits and pieces. So it's cutting off this fragment. So if I have a URL like example.com/hashabout, this looks like the homepage. So we are not actually seeing the JavaScript run that loads different content here because we are taking away the fragment. Does that mean that single-page applications don't work? Oh, yes, they do. You just have to use proper URLs. You have to configure your server right to serve these URLs. And you can then use the history API to still build a single-page application here. Why am I saying this? A lot of people might go like, no one does this anymore. Well, last year, we looked at a few million URLs, and we found out that 12% of the single-page applications that we looked at do use fragment-based routing, effectively hiding their content from search engines. If that is intentional or unintentional remains to be discussed or remains open, because we haven't really written to any of these and asked them if that's intentional or unintentional. But if you want your stuff in the search engine to show up, don't use fragment-based routing. Use the history API, please. Another thing that should be obvious, but unfortunately isn't, so I'll say this out loud again. Use links. I know, wild concept, this super new hot feature of the web that's called a link. It's wild, isn't it? A link is a link tag, an A tag with an href attribute that has a URL that I could potentially make an HTTP request to. Sure, /stuff isn't really a URL that I can make a request to, but it's automatically prefixed with if it's on example.com, this would be example.com/stuff. Cool. If it has a click handler that intercepts this and does some single-page application-y behavior with JavaScript, that's fine. We don't care. Doesn't matter. It still is a link. It still has a target where it goes. Super amazing. That's lovely. That's exactly what we need, because we extract this URL from the href and we put it in a queue, and eventually an HTTP request is made to that URL. What about this one? No URL. This is a link, but it goes nowhere as far as we're concerned. It does something on click. Great. Googlebot and other crawlers don't click on your stuff. We look for URLs. There's no URL here, so we'll skip this link. We'll not see this link. If this takes us to different content, we're not seeing the content that it takes us to, because this is not a link with a URL that we can crawl later on. Smart. Someone is like, oh, I heard Martin says a link has to have an href. So we put an href there. But that's, again, an empty URL. This is the fragment, which means we're still on the same URL. So that's not a link that takes us to different content. So we are ignoring that. That's not a hash. Is not a URL that I can make a request to, right? That's very clever. I like that. Yeah. You put the JavaScript handler into the href. Lovely. How do I make an HTTP call to JavaScript : go to stuff? I don't. It doesn't work. This is, again, a broken link. Well done. That's not a link. That's a button. If it does something on the current page, like submit a form or put something into the card or whatever, that's a button. Very well done. If it takes me to a different piece of content, that should be a link. If it moves me somewhere else to a different URL, make that a link. And that's the worst thing you can do. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a div or something else, a p, a span, it doesn't matter. That's not even an active element. Stefan here is really passionate about accessibility, and he'll be able to give you 1,000 reasons why this is a bad idea. Also for screen readers and other assistive technology, it breaks pretty much everything. Yes, you can use ARIA, but the first rule of the ARIA Club is don't use ARIA unless you really have to. You don't have to use ARIA here. There's a link tag for this purpose. Use the link tag. So don't do any of this. Stick to links, please. That way we can discover the different parts of your content, and we can actually index these pages potentially as well. Okay, but now the elephant in the room is, what about JavaScript applications where all the content is generated by JavaScript? So is this a problem? And sometimes you encounter SEOs who still think this is a problem. They come to you like, I did view source on our page, and this comes back like this. Googlebot will not be able to see this. No, that's not true. We do execute JavaScript. We do understand this kind of page. It's not a problem. Because what really happens is there's a crawl queue with all these URLs that we discovered. Then we do the HTTP request. We fetch the HTML and all the resources. Then we put this into a queue for a short amount of time. And then we basically open it in a headless Chromium, run all the JavaScript, and then the output rendered HTML after the JavaScript has been executed, that's used for indexing. So we then look again for all the links in there to put them in the crawl queue, and we try to understand the content, and then we put it in the index accordingly. A few SEOs might still say like, yeah, but Googlebot uses an outdated Chrome. That's old news. Then they haven't been updating their knowledge, at least since May 2019. We are using an evergreen Chrome, so we keep updating our Chromium to be on par with the current Chrome version that is unstable. Some other SEOs say like, oh, but Martin didn't tell you that it takes weeks for JavaScript to run. That's not true either. We found out in 2019 by looking at our data that the median time spent in the queue was 5 seconds. The 90th percentile gets rendered within minutes. A few websites might take a little longer than minutes, but the majority of websites gets rendered in really, really short amount of time. As I said, we keep updating our Chrome. So if you hear like, it's Chrome 41, then someone hasn't paid attention in the last year and a half. Our testing tools are also using the actual rendering infrastructure, so you can actually indexing infrastructure. So you can use our testing tools. I'll show them later to try out your websites in search. And we do support web components because it's an up-to-date Chrome. And to give you an example of why this sometimes might be a little confusing, here we have a web component that has some shadow DOM that says hello shadow DOM, and it has some light DOM that says hello light DOM. What does Googlebot actually see? Well, because it's rendering stuff, it will actually see not hello light DOM, because that's being overwritten. In rendering, the only thing that is visible to the user is hello shadow DOM, because the light DOM is completely ignored and overridden by what's inside the component in the shadow DOM. So that is weird, right? Because what if the JavaScript somehow fails to render? Then we might actually see hello light DOM, so we have different content. Is there some way to avoid this and actually use this properly? Well, one way would be to use slots and projection. In this case, we have light DOM and shadow DOM, but in the shadow DOM, we have the slot, which allows the browser to project the light DOM into the shadow DOM. So that way, we would basically get the output that contains both the shadow DOM and the light DOM where it has been projected. So web components work pretty much as users would expect them to work. Another really nice thing is lazy loading. Lazy loading is great for users, but oftentimes implemented in ways that is incompatible with how search engines work. I told you already that search engines don't click on things. They also don't scroll your page. The easiest way to circumvent this for images and iframes is to just use the native lazy loading in Chromium. Other browsers are following with implementations as well, I hope. If you say loading equals lazy, that means that the image or iframe will only start loading once it is about to become visible in the viewport. That works just fine with older browsers. It won't lazy load then. It will just eagerly load again. And also search engines will understand what's going on here. So that's kind of nice. If you have to build your own implementation because you're lazy loading something else than images or iframes, we recommend using the intersection observer. That works with search engines, at least with Google search as well. I can't speak for other search engines, really. You might have seen things like this in search results sometimes. They are rare because we are pretty damn good at spotting these kind of problems. But if you make a computer system guess, sometimes it guesses wrong. That's just what happens. In this case, an error page was put into search results. How did that happen? Well, let's look at our web application. So this is a client-side rendered single-page application, and I go to a URL that doesn't exist. I mean, that's clearly an error page, isn't it? It says, whoops, Kitty has left the building, and there's a crying kitty emoji. I would say this is an error page. But if we look at what the server says, it's not. The server says, like, that's cool with me. Here you go. Here's a page. There's content. Everything's fine. That's misleading signals, isn't it? So now the computer has to guess and understand that actually this might be an error page. It doesn't say error anywhere. It says whoops, and it says Kitty has left the building. But it doesn't say this is an error page. This is no kitty found, or error. This kitty doesn't exist. No such thing. So the computer now has to guess because this web server told us this is a good URL. Here's the content for that URL. Why? We have HTTP statuses for this. Why doesn't this say 404? Oh, it's because of the way that it's implemented. So in this application, the server always serves a 200 OK and the index HTML file that then loads the JavaScript file of the application. And then It takes the ID from the URL. In this case, lol would know, makes an API call. The API call comes back with some response. We check, oh, this cat doesn't actually exist. So we show an error page. But the HTTP status has been sent. The server has says 200 OK. There's no way of us now changing this in JavaScript. We can't just say like, oh, no, actually, this is a 404. I'm sorry. We can still show the user an error. But again, bots might be confused at this point. What can we do instead? We have a few options. One of them would be to set up the server with one specific URL, let's say like /nokitty or /notfound or /404, some URL that always returns a 404. And then if we run into the error condition, we are actually using a JavaScript redirect to point the user and the bot to a page that says 404 and then shows an error page. In this case, the browser, the crawler, the bot goes to this URL. The JavaScript redirects the bot to the 404 URL. And it's like, okay, so this URL is a redirection of this, and this URL does not exist. So the page is an error page. We don't put this in the index. There's other ways of doing this, but that's one of the ways to deal with this cleanly. Okay, I think I have taken enough of your time. I don't want to take more of your time now. If you want to learn more, we have the JavaScript SEO Basics guide at goo.gle/js-seo-basics. We also have a video series that goes into a little more detail. Season 1 is out. Season 2 is about to come at js-seo-videos if you want to learn more about these kind of things and like things that you want to look out for. I already hinted at, you should test your pages and that there's testing tools. Testing tools help you catch these problems, hopefully in development or on staging instead of in production. Because if something happens in production, it can take a few days until we revisit your page and fix that error for you. So you want to test early and you want to test often. How can you test things? Well, the easiest test is to go to the mobile-friendly test. Besides telling you if a page is mobile-friendly or not, it also allows you to see what kind of resources have been fetched, if they have been fetched successfully, and you see the rendered HTML. Ignore the screenshot. The screenshot is a nice, like, for a quick smoke test. You can look if there's smoke on this, if there's a problem on the screenshot. That's something that you want to investigate further. But more importantly is the rendered HTML. If you look at the HTML, you see what we are using for indexing. That's the HTML that goes into the indexing pipeline. If you want instead to monitor your entire page and see errors if they do occur in production, you can use the free Search Console. Verify that you own a domain and you get these reports. And in the reports, you see the problems that we might run into. You can test if the problem persists in the live page, what we have seen when we indexed it, and you get more tips and tricks on what to improve and make differently or do differently in order to perform better. It has all sorts of different reports and bits and pieces in there, so definitely check that out. It's free. You don't lose anything on using Google Search Console. So summarizing these, mobile-friendly test is pretty much your go-to tool to quickly test if a URL works or doesn't work. If you want to test and monitor your entire production site, then Search Console is the right tool for that. If you're interested in structured data and rich results, then definitely check out the rich results test. That is also a really good tool to see what we can extract from your website. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your attention. I hope you build cool stuff and that you are not falling for bad SEO tactics anymore. Thank you. Woo! Muted Stefan is muted.
Here we go.
Yay!
That was good. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
I always love the nitty-gritty details. So we had one question here. I think you covered that on the way, but we can sum that up. So I'm going to read it out. So can I build SEO-friendly single-page apps? I always thought that a server-side rendering approach is always the way to go. I think you covered that more or less.
I think we covered that more or less. I want to say that if you want to invest in server-side rendering, that's a good long-term investment because it just gives you a more robust basis to work from. It is less likely to fail, but you can build an SEO-friendly single-page application with client-side rendering too, at least for Google search.
Cool. Yeah, when a single-page app fails, when the JavaScript for the network just fails or you have an exception, then it's a blank page, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Cool. I have one question about, I recently implemented JSON LD in the head of my stuff. How will this, so I'm digging into the Google Search Console once a week, maybe. What can I expect when I add something like JSON LD? Will that have any impact on ranking then? Or is that, what happens here?
It doesn't have impact on ranking. What it does have impact on, however, is it makes this page eligible for rich results, depending a little bit on the kind of structured data that you added. If you go to goo.gle/search-gallery, you see lots of verticals that we have so-called rich results for. And these are basically, if you search for a recipe, for instance, you might see like a nice image and then how long it takes to prepare, how many calories does this have, blah, blah, blah. To get that, you need to be eligible for these, and you are eligible for these if you have correctly implemented structured data on your page. So you might see rich results for this in the future.
Cool. Then we have another quick question, which we also, I think that will be a quick yes. So do crawlers follow clients that redirects?
Yeah.
And I'm going to hijack that session for another 2 minutes. Is there any recommendation? So I do a lot of tech blogging, right? And I feel like in our community, there's recently a push for, oh, this is how you should make your blog to be successful. And Google search plays a big role in this, right? Because if it doesn't pop up, it's just writing for yourself. Mm-hmm. Is there any recommendation on article length or something? Because I'm writing down very often these very, very short notes, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they are ranking fairly well and sometimes they don't.
Which kind of answers the question. There's no recommendation on the article length. Just as long as it's relevant to whatever it is that you're trying to say, there you go. Like if it's short, if it's long, it's fine. It doesn't. Actually, long things tend to, as long as they are focused on one thing, that's fantastic, because then there might be different aspects that potentially can rank for different queries. But if it's long and a mix of different things, then this just means that we are having a harder time understanding what this page is about, and that might actually impact ranking. We have recently launched something that we call passage ranking. Actually, we call it passage indexing, but I think it's a misnomer. I think it's more passage ranking, where we try to be better at like long mixed content should also be able to rank for different queries and different topics. But yeah, it doesn't. There's no like recommended length. I know that cool. Max is also burning to ask a question.
I actually have 2 questions now. So the thing is, we didn't have the introduction, but I work for the acquisition team at AutoScout, and basically that's the SEO people plus a bunch of developers.
That's a cool team then.
Yes, it is. The best team, of course. And we have this idea that we want to do basically a server-side rendered React app, so basically static, and then we hydrate it once this page is loaded. And will the Google bot then be able to read what is then later loaded on the page?
Very likely, yes, unless something goes wrong, and then we would fall back on the server-side content. Yeah.
Okay, cool, and that means that we can go with the strategy. And the other thing that I was always interested in, so we have this catalog of all the car makes and models, right? And it's huge pages with a lot of text on them. And we were always wondering, is this a good idea to have those texts that say basically Audi was founded in blah, 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 very long, very long, very long. Nobody reads that anyways. It's also at the bottom of the page, of course, where it belongs. Is this still a good strategy? Because apparently back in the days it was, but we have 2020 now, and I'm really wondering.
I'll do the best thing I can do here and basically give you homework, which is have a look at your Search Console dashboards. If you are seeing that these pages happen to rank and actually drive traffic, then they are great. If they don't drive traffic, then why are you having them?
Yeah, they do. That's for sure. So they
there
are.
You go. There you go. There's your answer.
Okay. So still a good idea to have the texts.
It depends a little bit. It depends a little bit on your niche, on the market, on the exact content, because just having a page for the sake of having a page is never a good idea. But if it's relevant, useful content that people are looking for, then sure, if it answers a need of the user searching for it, then why would it not be a good idea?
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Cool. Thank you very much, Martin and Max, for the questions. So we're gonna bring in my master deck here. Where's my stuff? Here we go. So this was Martin. So applause again for Martin. Thank you very much. I have to click a button here. Here we go. And with this, we can go into the next section. Max is already there, so we probably can flip the order around here. So I think I have it the other way around. But with us here is now Max. He works, or he's working on Autoscout 24/7, and he wants to share some headless CMS stories and how it's going with Contentful. Cool.
Yes. Great.
Take it away, Max. Now we have to switch the screens, and then we're ready to go.
Cool. So hi, I'm Max. As I just said, I'm a software engineer and I work at the acquisition team. And I'm basically, this team is part of the user growth group at Autoscout. So we are trying to acquire people, like consumers that want to find their car. And I brought today the topic of how we went with Contentful. So we went headless, and of course it was a few struggles and a lot of fun. And I actually brought you today 3 struggles as an example of what we faced when we went headless. So one was the Contentful delivery API, another one preview and trust and localization. But before I go into those topics, I want to quickly introduce you to Autoscout if you don't know us yet. So we are the largest pan-European online car market with over 2 million listings, and we have basically all things cars. So we have, of course, used cars, but also leasing and subscription and buying new cars and financing and all those things. And of course, we want to guide our users, and this is why at some point we said, yeah, we need a CMS to do that. Or basically, we had CMSs in the past, but we had too many and they were too old and they failed us at some point, and we decided, let's go with a new one. And in the summer of 2018, we did our big research, and then we said, let's go and evaluate which fits us best. And we decided Contentful will fit us best with the headless infrastructure, because we have a very diverse content model, let's say, content structure. Of course, it grew. It was not always this convoluted or convoluted looking, let's say. We started very small, which is just this branch at the beginning. And then we branched out and built all of our company pages, and we've been promotional pages, and we have a whole review area and a video area and a news area and all those things. And maybe to quickly show you what we have, this is basically our magazine with what you would expect, all the content around news and reviews and all those things. We have our company pages, as I said. We have promo pages, which are completely different and can be customized by our marketing team as they want, but of course with a few limitations. They cannot do whatever they want. We guide them there. And because we are pan-European, as I said, we have to support up to 15 locales in our case. So it's quite a lot of content. So we are at the moment at around 33,000 content pieces in this whole structure. So to tell you about the struggles. The first one was the big blackout of, did I write 18? I meant 19, but it doesn't matter. We have had this whole system set up in a way where we were directly querying data from the content delivery API. And there was this one day when suddenly everything went out and we saw that the API didn't respond anymore. And we asked our partners at Contentful, and they said, yeah, we're very sorry, but you have a noisy neighbor on your cluster, basically, and now it's not going as planned. But everything was still in the SLOs, and everything was still fine. But of course, it was a wake-up call for us to say, do we really want to always dynamically query this API directly? Or could we maybe go a different route and maybe a more secure one? And we were lucky in this case. We had everything still in cache, so the end user didn't really see a problem for the most pages. But yeah, it was a wake-up call, and this is why we decided to come up with a bit of a different architecture. And we are doing basically static pages now. We decided the content that we are showing here is very static. It's basically just articles or, like, as I said, promo pages, but also those are not really dynamic and they don't need too much API calls that go outside. So they were for us a good candidate to go static, and we did static projects in the past where we basically, let me quickly explain it. So basically, you have your content here in Contentful, and in the end, you save the HTML that you show to your end users in a bucket, in an S3 bucket. And if you don't know about S3 buckets, so basically, we are doing everything in the cloud with AWS. And how our content flow basically works is somebody, like an editor in Contentful, publishes a piece of content, and we use the webhooks of Contentful to trigger a Lambda. A Lambda is basically a function in the cloud that gets called. It has an endpoint that you can just call, and this gets triggered then. And because it could happen, of course, that like the Italian author and the Dutch author at the same time want to publish content, and we don't want to generate the whole catalog twice in seconds, we collect those calls in a Kinesis stream. This is basically just like you have to think of a queue of calls, and the latest one gets then sent really to this generation process. This again is a Lambda. It's this quite small functions. They can run up to, I think, 15 minutes if I'm not mistaken. And basically what we do there is we call then the Contentful CDA. We have our custom React renderer, and this thingy gets all the data and pulls it all in and does some magic, and then spits out basically HTML, CSS, and JS. And this is, again, what I said, we put then in the bucket. And then we have it statically on our server infrastructure. And let's say it happens again that the CDA should not be available, which didn't happen so far up until now, but could have happened, that it's not available for like 15 minutes, half an hour. It doesn't matter for us anymore, because now the pages for the end user are always in our infrastructure, and this S3 bucket basically never fails. So when this thingy fails, then the internet is down, because everybody uses this kind of technology, and then everybody has a problem, not only us. And it is not super important that this part always works, right? It could happen that for, like, let's say a half an hour or even a day, nobody can publish. Well, then we don't have the latest and greatest Porsche review on our page that day, maybe then tomorrow, but the end user is still happy. And of course, we are using also a lot of images. We want to present our cars very well, so that's why we are utilizing the image API of Contentful. And there, whenever somebody uploads an image, also this Lambda here gets called via a webhook, and we just save the image in a small file format, in a large format, and for backup, basically an original, and also put it in a bucket. And again, if this part has a hiccup at some point, we know that all the images are always there and are available for our consumers or end users then to see. Another problem or struggle that you have when you go headless is this thing where your editors probably have had already touch points with CMSs in the past. And we heard this question or similar questions like, in the old CMS, I was able to change the size of the headline. Why can't I do this now? A lot, because as you might all know, is in the headless system, style doesn't matter, right? It's basically just a structured format of content, and your editors don't really allowed to manage the way how things look. And for us as the development and also the design team, it was really helpful, because we could say, okay, we will use our design system that we have in place in our company, which is called Choker UI. It's open source, so you can look it up. And we can predefine articles always look like this, headlines always look like this, they're always this big, and they're always in H1, and it's the first one, and always H2, 3, blah, 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 and it's the other ones. So that the editors can't mess this up too much, and they are not allowed to style, which comes, of course, with the problem. The editor writes an article in a system which doesn't look like this, but like this, right? It's completely different from what they are used to. Like the end article, they have no feel of how it will behave in the end. And this is where you have to build trust, or at least this is what we found. So in the beginning, in the very beginning, we worked very closely with our editors and said, we are sorry, this system doesn't have a preview yet. We have to build one. We will build one. Please trust us that the pages will always look in the end until we have the preview ready. And at some point, of course, we did. This was not the highest priority for us, because for us, the highest priority was get the pages ready for the end user, because that's our main customer. But our second customer basically is, of course, the editor group. And this is the more vocal one, because they sit right next to us, or at least they used to before Corona. And they could come by and say, why is this not working? Why is this looking differently? But basically what we did to help them get confidence that their article looks the way they want to look it, and they can have a preview, which you would expect. We again have like very simple workflow. We have this preview button here in Contentful, right? But it's not the normal one. We are using a a UI extension, which I think is one of the greatest things that Contentful has to offer, is this UI extension, where we can code little tiny UI snippets and make them ours. But with the former 36 UI library from Contentful, we can make them look like as if they were native. So nobody noticed when we exchanged the normal preview button with our preview button. Basically, when somebody clicks it, again, one of those lambdas, so you can see we love those lambdas, gets triggered and basically spits out the page. Like dynamically created under an ugly URL. I can basically show it to you. We are here now in one of our articles, an advice article about when your door is frozen, what can you do now? And the article itself looks like this. It's live. I forgot to open it, so let's load it. So this is what it looks like. We have also a bunch of listings and this kind of things. And the editor would click here, would load. And then he sees basically the same thing. A few things are not working, as you can see here. For example, we have listings here. They are not showing up here. This is due to how our server infrastructure is built, but that's not so important. So this is a point where we then could gain the trust of our editors and could say, look, the page looks more or less like the end result. There's a few things that will never work, but you can trust us that the end result will be okay. And if you have this tight relationship with your editing team, then this can work. So basically, this is how we overcame this struggle. And the last struggle that I want to show you quickly is how we struggled with localization. This was basically actually the first one when I looked back historically. So I shuffled the order a little bit around, but this was a make it or break it problem for us when we were in the evaluation phase. So we got 15 locales. How do we deal with them in a CMS? And I mean, there's many CMSs out there, and for us, this was one of the key problems to solve. How can we solve this huge problem? And Contentful looked very promising, very, very promising. And they had this great resource of like how Contentful proposes you deal with localization. You have the field version, the entry version, and they all looked great. And when we played around with all of them, but we found out that you always have to bring the default locale with you. So if you would say your default locale for your system is English, then you have to at least fill out all the required English fields in your content. And that's not always the case for us. Because sometimes, let's say, the Italian author will write an Italian article that will never have, for example, the German default locale, because it will never be in German. It will just be in Italian or in French or whatever. And we were thinking, so what can we do to circumvent this? And we basically came up with this method where we said, okay, we won't deal with the built-in Contentful way of handling the languages. Contentful allows us to put everything in every field, so why not create a normal text field with a drop-down, put all our locales in, and make this the required field. And then we have just one language in Contentful directly, let's say English, and but with this mark in what language the actual content piece is. And this works all great until you realize that, we have two Germans, for example. We have the German and the Austrian German version. And how do you deal with that? And we came up then again with a clever, I think, clever way of dealing with this problem. Again, with the really helpful UI extensions. So we take basically this information and this information, hope you can see that, and create a unique slug, which this is basically this UI extension I was talking about. Let's make it a bit bigger. Rip. And whenever I change to, let's change this article to Austrian, it sees the change, and then it will automatically see, oh, there is already a content piece in Austrian, or I mean, it's German, but in Austria, so I cannot use this language again. And this, as you can see, is one of the first UI extensions that we built. This is why the error message still shows up here. I mean, now the UI extensions have greatly improved, and you can pop up really cool alert boxes, and this is probably something we will do in the future. But this, again, is not super mission critical for us that this works, because we know we have, let's say, 40 users of this system, but we have hundreds of thousands of end users, of consumers, and we have to focus our energy more on them than on the 40 ones that sit in our building or in our offices. But again, this helps them already to see, there's a problem. I cannot publish in that language, apparently, because it's already taken. And with this, we overcame the problem of this. You always have to provide a default language, because this is always behind the scenes basically marked as English, but it's not. Yeah, I hope that was helping you. And yeah, then let's go to the questions.
Cool. Thank you, Max. It's always nice to see kind of real world examples. Super cool. We have one question from Andrew. So he said that he built an API gateway for Contentful, and his lambdas will be executed from SQS, from an SQS queue. Oh, this is far above my head, the AWS DevOps. But he asks you if your lambdas are directly called in Contentful.
Yes and no. Let's go back to the architecture. This one for the images is, and the one for the preview is as well, because they are not super critical, and it doesn't happen so often that somebody publishes images. Or, I mean, it happens, but they don't, because it's decoupled. For the images, we don't care so much, but for the real content, for the big chunk of the 33,000 pieces, we don't want to build over and over in very fast iterations. We just want to build basically every 15 minutes maximum. And I mean, you can see, yes, we are also calling a lambda here directly, but not the expensive one, let's say. This is why we have this in-between step where we collect calls and then call the expensive one. I hope that answers the question.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up the making it static, right? When you're dealing with APIs, that is not a Contentful specific thing, but when an API is down, you're down. This is always their downtime is our downtime.
Of course, yeah. But it was not Contentful. It just happened, and this is the moment when you then realize, should I overthink the system that I just built?
Yeah, totally.
Much faster to build a dynamic version, let's say, where we really directly hook up into Contentful APIs and then say, React, do your thing and call stuff and build. That's much easier and faster and works until it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm gonna quote you on that one. But I'm also a hipster JavaScript developer, right? And the JavaScript folks or front end folks these days go a lot of into the static roots back again, and I think that's a good thing, because at the end it's just less complexity to ship things initially.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Max.
Yeah,
that was awesome. Sweet. And with this, we're entering the stage with the last person for today, who is Younes. I know Younes from our community Slack, and Max already introduced UI extensions. Now we have basically apps, which are UI extensions on steroids, and Younes just showed up and said, "Hey, I built a thing," and that's why he is with us here today. Hey, Jules, how's life?
Hi, good, very good. Thanks for having me. Thanks for
Cool. Yeah,
inviting.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited about the app. So let's have a look what you built.
Sure, let's have a look. The question that has popped up quite a few times by now is, why did you build this? Maybe I should start answering that. Well, maybe I should. No, let's first show what we're talking about. Should be seeing my screen. Are you?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. No. Then now you should be seeing my screen.
That looks good. Whoops. Yeah. Can you zoom in a little?
Sorry?
And not. Can you zoom in a little?
Oh, yeah,
Like
sure.
Command Plus.
Sure.
Sweet.
So I've built a technically it's a very simple app. It's a button in your entry sidebar that basically allows you to trigger a webhook once pushed. The question then arises, obviously, like, hey, but why Contentful is having this great webhook integration stuff, features, and why did you build this? And the answer to that is that we're having too much builds, simply. So the default webhook functionality is awesome. It allows you to configure a webhook to be triggered with all kinds of parameters and post fields and whatever you like on a certain event within Contentful. And we had a static website builder for sale. The
Hipster stuff.
Yeah, exactly. As I'm the hipster that wants that stuff, and I was the one deciding on what to.
I'm too.
So what we ended up doing, because we wanted, there were two roads to take. Either we could just enable publishing from, or triggering the webhook from the publish button from within a page content type in Contentful. But then whenever a content editor would have changed something deeply linked into that page, the content editor would have to navigate within Contentful back to the original page, finding out what the original page actually was on, and then publishing there. But the problem is that if a page is already published, you can't publish it again. If a linked item, a linked content
right,
item has been changed, because it is published, you can change status and unpublish it, but you couldn't really do that with the functionality. And as long as the site was still quite small, it was fine just having every content type triggering the webhook once published. But at some point, that just cost way too much builds and really ate up our build time and caused long queues and stuff like that. So we decided we wanted to have something where editors could just go ahead and make a lot of changes, push publish whenever they liked, use the preview functionality we implemented to see what they actually changed, and then once ready, then trigger a production build for the system to build new pages and have control over that and limit the amount of builds stacking up on Versal, basically.
cool.
So that's what it is, and what it comes down to is indeed it uses the new Contentful app bootstrap thingy, which is great. I started building this with some older boilerplate thing from Contentful that was there. Not sure what it was, but it was using Rollup, and I'm a big TypeScript fan. And Rollup somehow decided to do compile TypeScript, but not fail when there was any error. So in the end, you just had the TypeScript transpiled away, compiled away, and you would have a build app with all kinds of types errors possibly in there. And there's a long going thread on the Rollup GitHub about this. It's their opinion on how they should support it, and that's fine. But I didn't like it because I want my TypeScript to fail if there is an error. And then this popped up. So I rewrote the thing quickly, or basically copy pasted everything into this boilerplate, which feels like create React app.
Yeah, it is on top of create React app. Actually.
Right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So yeah, and it's just as easy as create React app. Just spin up the thing and put in some code. So basically, what this does is it uses the configuration scene in the sidebar, and then
do you have it installed? Can we have a look?
It's this tab. Yeah. So
you have to command plus a little again.
Sure. Yeah, that doesn't stick, of course, between my tabs. No. So I don't know. We'll have to discuss this later, Stefan. I was just preparing during this call because I didn't have. So what I actually did is I had it installed into this space already. I removed it from the organization, I guess, and now it says this. So this is like the previously installed app on production, and this was one on looking on localhost. I don't know. It's the demo effect, but this is the one I just installed. I won't be installing it again because that's causing all this stuff. But basically, like any app, you just go on an organization level where you create the app. You fill what you want it to be named, and you add the URL of where the app is hosted, and then you can install the app on a space. And once you've done that, it will be available here for you to edit its configure. And this, what you're seeing here, is the first view that's actually the code from the app. So this is not Contentful. This is the app itself. This is the config screen, which on the code side of things translates to this component, this React component.
Yep.
So to put it simply, it's just some kind of, I don't know, form builder or something. So you can just add as many webhooks as you want. You can give them a name. You can configure the text of the button it should show, and you can configure the webhook URL. Really simple. I think it's even too simple to be used with Netlify, because I think Netlify has you to specify some kind of secret in the post content, and that's currently not even allowed to. This just solved our pain, and I decided to open source it as I made it in my own time and felt free to do so. But I can imagine that it's way too limited for others to be used currently.
Well, we're gonna have a live coding session soon, right?
Exactly. So maybe in the Q&A, like we discussed, we should just ask for some ideas. The first one, I guess, is a quite simple quite logical addition, and that's to add some kind of configurable post body for to be sent along with the webhook. But let's see what people come up with. It will be interesting. In the end, when it's installed, it looks like this. So the one without the error. And basically you can just select one of the webhooks you filled in the configuration we saw before, and depending on which one you select, you basically just trigger
make a request.
Exactly, which would then trigger a build on the other side, which is Versal, which you're now seeing for the Dutch viewers. Might be this is Dutch slang for toilet paper.
Good to know. Good to know.
I built it. I bought this URL in times of COVID starting, and everything. I don't know, buying toilet paper for some reason. So
yeah,
it's a project I used for kitchen sinking, basically. But yeah, shortly said, this is what it is. The stuff provided by Contentful make my life really easy. So the create React app thing for the Contentful extension, and also, like you see, the format 36 tokens to make it all look super native Contentful like. I didn't spend the time on getting that notification here. That's maybe another idea to do that. But yeah,
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. You're underselling a little bit. So what we have in the marketplace, we have apps available, for example, for Netlify, right? These are always custom built. I think what comes here is the power to kind of use it with whatever you want. I think if we spend 2 hours on that, we can totally polish that up to something could become something like for other services that we don't have an integration with. And a colleague of mine recently just shared with me, how cool would it be if you could, inside of the webhook configuration, could define a GraphQL query, which will then be the post body of the request. Because this way you could be like, right? We would have even a nice interface, but I will bring that up when we're doing it live, because I'm really digging that idea.
Sounds cool. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
I think it's super nice that you shared that with us, that you answered my email or however I approached you initially. So thank you for being part of that.
No worries. I'm glad. Thanks for asking me, inviting me.
Cool. So with this, we have to switch to the final screen here.
Maybe we allow people, give them a little bit time to come up with ideas for that coding session we have next week to extend this plugin a little bit. But
I'm gonna, right now it's fairly quiet. I'm gonna make sure that we tweet that out and that I share that with a bunch of folks.
Let's do that. Yeah, or just maybe let people just comment under the video that will be hosted on YouTube.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna try to get some ideas in here for sure.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Jens. And with this, I have to click here again. With this, we have, if anyone has any general questions, now we have a few. Aha, we have Andrew wants to know the GitHub URL. Do you maybe want to paste it in our private
chat?
Sure. And Angie will post it over.
Yeah, sure.
So in case, yeah, cool. So Andrew, link is coming. I really think that Jens undersold a little bit, because I could see there a lot of power coming with this. And with this, if anyone has some final questions on Contentful, some use cases, question in general, now's the time. I'm gonna fill the next 20-25 seconds with random words. And with this one,
I have a question. I have a question.
Max has a question. Go for it.
Yeah. Do you know? So this is a thing that I asked for the last 2 years, I think. You have rich text, right? It's the most amazing thing. When are tables coming to rich text?
I don't know an ETA. I'm following some Kanban boards, and I've seen a ticket lately.
Cool.
I cannot promise anything here, though.
Yeah, of course not. That's for sure. But a ticket is always more.
Don't put me on the spot, Max.
You have no idea how long I've been waiting for those tables. This will be the defining moment when we can switch to rich text.
Yeah, I see you there. Cool. So with that, no final question in the chat. If someone wants to hang out still, for me it's currently 8:30. We're gonna hang out in Slack if there are enough people to try out this game. I'm really digging it, so we're just gonna try that out. You can go to contentful.com/Slack instead of the monthly hangout. We're gonna see if people wants to join and just play around a little bit. I can really say it's fun and surprisingly thrilling. So the idea is that you're on a spaceship and one person has to kill the others. If you're the killer and you have to lie to all the others, man, I get super sweaty. It's super weird, but it's a lot of fun. So if you want to join that, you can go to contentful.com/Slack. You have to go there because we don't want to paste public calls here on stream. It's the monthly Hangout channel. And with this was our first community monthly Hangout for November. We're going to do the same thing at some point in December. If you have any feedback, please let me or Shai or Angie know. And we would really love to see more participation. So if you build something, if you have any questions, if you want to have ideas on how to make that better and more appealing for everybody, please let us know. And I think that's a wrap then. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to continue with more Hangouts in 3.5 hours, I think, which will be US East 6 p.m. and then US West also 6 p.m. I believe. You can find out on contentful.com/events when these start. It will be the same format, but Shai will be hosting them. Shai can wave in the camera now, and I'm gonna be maybe I'm gonna be around for the US East edition, but definitely not for US West. So